My name is Cheryl Wood. I work for the City of Manchester at the Waterworks. I run their water lab at the treatment plant.
How do you describe a typical day at work?
Typical day is we start out our day by collecting samples within the treatment plant and all through the processes to make sure that the water coming in from Lake Massabesic is treated and cleaned properly and disinfected before we send it out to the public. So that starts our day. Depending on what day of the week, we collect samples throughout our distribution system. We're required by law to collect 120 samples a month minimum. And we test those for total coliform bacteria and E. coli and chlorine residual. So we do about 30 samples a week. And then we pick up anywhere from 9 to 14 watershed samples from the waters that flow into Massabesic. So you want to test those for certain things, for different parameters to make sure that we're not going to be blinded by any kind of contaminant coming into the water treatment plant, and to keep a track on different bacteria levels throughout the system so we know how much treatment we need to do. We upload to the state of New Hampshire all of our results. We sample different times of year, monthly, for different things that are required by the Safe Drinking Water Act. We answer customer complaints. We do tours. So a day is basically just making sure that the water quality is good for the city.
What education did you receive?
When I came in, I was in operations, and I went to a technical school and got an AS, Associates of Science in Environmental Engineering. So I was doing STEM long before the STEM was a popular term. Back in the early 80s, when I graduated from high school, I went into environmental engineering, and I generally was the only female in my class, but it just made it all the more interesting to do things that didn't come natural, kind of thing. I've always loved science. From there, I spent 7 years in operations and decided that maybe I wanted a little bit more. So I went back to school at the University of New Hampshire, Manchester, and I got my biology degree. And then I went up to Durham for the last 2 years and got a microbiology degree. So during that time frame, I just moved up in the lab from lab assistant to lab technician to lab manager. So chemistry, you need chemistry, biology, and microbiology to do what I do. It's definitely a bachelor's degree at the minimum to work in a laboratory such as this.
Does your personality help make this career a good fit?
I'm pretty much a type A person when it comes to work and organization, but I like to have fun. I have a great sense of humor. I think it comes from going to school with the majority of my classes were all male-dominated. And then I chose a career path that was still mostly male-dominated. And during that time frame, you get a unique perspective, I think, and you learn to have a sense of humor. I've also developed a youth ed program at the Waterworks, so I enjoy working with kids, and I enjoy teaching and sharing what I know. So it's just nice to have a good attitude and like people and connect with them. So I think that's kind of my personality.
What kind of support did you have along the way?
Well, I've been blessed with great science teachers right from like 5th grade. I moved from a community where I went to school, and every teacher that I'd had been one teacher the whole day, and it had been a female. And I moved to a different community, and I switched classes in 5th grade, and I had 3 male teachers. And my male science teacher, just walking through his classroom that one day, it was in March, I believe, and he had an incubator full of baby chicken eggs and baby chicks. And I was just totally fascinated at that point on. And after that, I think I started paying attention more to science. I've had great science teachers. At the Waterworks, David Paris, who was one of my first bosses, he is definitely a mentor to me, He's the one that kind of pushed me out of the operations and said that my talents were, in the lab and I should pursue that. And my other mentor that helped me on my journey was another gentleman that worked for Manchester Waterworks named Ethan Howard. Those two were great mentors to me. Plus, your family, my mom, I was raised by a single mom, and my grandparents really supported me and told me that, if I could do anything. I didn't have to follow the traditional female role, that I could learn and do anything I wanted. So I was supported.
Do you see Manchester's history in the work you do?
Being a part of the Waterworks, we have access to a lot of historical data and a lot of historical pictures. So it's really interesting to see how the city developed with the mills and learning like the trolley system, and how over by Massabesic was like their release when we would take the trolley over there. We've been doing our youth education program since the 1994, and we've encouraged students making water projects. We've had our science fairs in the mill yard a couple of times, our city fairs. So the kids are just fascinated by the buildings and the history that goes along with them.
What do you see for STEM opportunities in Manchester?
Just the different companies coming in, like you have DECA. It's encouraging inclusivity for all. And it's encouraging people to take science and technology in the STEM field seriously, because that's what's going to drive the future, is people need to know how to do these things. And it shouldn't all be just book work. It's got to be the hands-on, the development phase, the curiosity and the learning. So I think the more tech-based companies that come in here, the mill yard is the perfect place for them to set up, because you have such history. And it's close to the city itself, and it's close to some of the universities. So I think it's a great time for STEM and for people to move in for it. I've noticed, as I've been teaching for probably 10 years at UNH, that when I first started out, it's a science, an aquatic micro class, and the majority of my participants in the class were males. And then for about 6 years, I might have had one male every fall, and it was the female driven with the biotech process and everything. But now this year, I'm half and half again. So it's great to see that, it's not just dominated by one gender or another, that STEM is for everyone.